It seems to me, first of all, from what I understand from doctors, that's really rare. If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
And when it comes to establishing your worldview, I was curious, what newspapers and magazines did you regularly read before you were tapped for this to stay informed and to understand the world?
I've read most of them, again, with a great appreciation for the press, for the media.
But like what ones specifically? I'm curious that you...
all of them, any of them that have...
Can demonic spirits attach themselves to inanimate objects? The answer is yes.
Welcome to Twat Waffle of the Week.
Welcome back to Twat. Generally, I do not update the stories I cover on Twats, but I'm taking a wee bit of a different tack this time around. To be honest, I am actually hoping it kickstarts my ass into being more active with my blog. But we shall see. If you all remember, one story I mentioned last week was the Greg Abbott-Ken Paxton affair in Texas, ordering the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, DFPS, to investigate for child abuse anyone aware of certain medical treatments for transgender youth. Immediately following Abbott's announcement, the ACLU of Texas and Lambda Legal filed a lawsuit to block a statewide directive described as an attempt to persecute trans children and their families. According to NPR and BuzzFeed, DFPS is actively involved in at least 2 cases that fall under the purview of the new directive put forth by Paxton and Abbott. Within 24 hours, quote, a Texas judge on Wednesday blocked the state from investigating the parents of a transgender teenager over gender confirmation treatments, but stopped short of preventing the state from looking into other reports about children receiving similar care, unquote. What's important to note, quote, Clark set a March 11th hearing on whether to issue a broader temporary order blocking enforcement of Abbott's directive, unquote. So we sit and wait. I also recommend this article by the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Paxton legal opinion on transgender youth uses misleading citations, shocking parallels. Basically, it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? In-depth look, I guess, at the Texas Attorney General's recent legal opinion that calls transgender healthcare for minors child abuse. In the review, it discusses how the DFPS cites sources, or should I say Paxton Abbott cite sources in a misleading way, and then they drew parallels that the researchers say simply do not exist. It's a very highly recommended read. So, other than my circle of friends, I haven't really spoken much about dominionist theology in a long time. But with Palin and Bachman both becoming more vocal of late, I'm finding myself being drawn back into the fray. Don't take me wrong. The new batch of crazies, i.e. Kettker, is just as wild as the old batch, but to be honest, they're not as smart. Actually, they're pretty fucking dumb. What I'm saying now is the mixing of the Q bullshit with the nutfuckery of religion. In my mind, it just doesn't compute. A good example of the old school crazy I'm talking about is Lance Wallanow, who spoke on Flashpoint concerning dominionist theology. Although, to be honest, I don't know his full stance on Q. I believe he considers those involved in it to be false prophets. The key point in Montalia's piece, quote, "The only way to save the nation," Walnut declared, "is for those mountains to be seized by Christians, or more specifically, Walnut's kind of Christian," end quote. This is a point that for years I had made, which boils down to, are you the right kind of Christian? Or, in Walnut's case, are you a Christian nationalist? Speaking of crazy futtknuckers,
what we're seeing is 100% fabricated. Okay? Now, obviously, if Pelosi and all these people are for Ukraine, you go opposite. That's just
common sense.
Common sense. Okay.
Enough said. And here's a recent all-star. And this clip just blows my mind. The politics aside for the moment, this woman is not very smart. How she ended up being part of our government, I will never know.
I have got to get to the airport, but I'm glad to talk to you about this. I do not know Nick Fuentes. I've never heard him speak. I've never seen a video. I don't know what his views are, so I'm not aligned with anything that may be controversial. What I can tell you is I went to his event last night to address his very large following, because that is it's a very young following, and it's a generation I'm extremely concerned about.
It's a white nationalist.
Excuse me a minute. I'll tell you exactly why I went. I went to talk to them about America First policies, and I talked to them about what's important for our country going forward.
Something I learned very early on as a blogger and then content creator of the last 6 years. You vet your information, whether it be for a blog post or whether you're an interviewer. You find out as much as you can about your interviewee. Whether you yourself are the interviewee, you find out what platform you're going to be part of. Regretfully, it's something I learned the hard way. Thankfully, I had no negative consequences, but I sure sweated bullets. What I find odd in this little Marjorie Taylor Greene BS is her use of the America First policies phrase. What MTG seems to forget is the history of such a stance. America First was a phrase used by the KKK at its peak. Later in the 1930s and 1940s, the term became associated with fascism and bigotry against Jews. Fuentes is a known supremacist. So, let that sink in. In closing, this week I present to you Kip Davis as a new to me YouTuber. Now, I do have to throw this caveat out. I'm very familiar with Kip's work in regards to the Dead Sea Scrolls. I was just unaware he actually had a YouTube channel. So, I present to you Kip Davis. Enjoy. Peace out, y'all.